Let's get into it now. A spoiler-free movie review of The Smashing Machine, starring Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson as MMA fighter Mark Kerr. Also stars Emily Blunt, Ryan Bader, who is an MMA fighter making his acting debut, and making his solo directorial debut. The movie is written and directed by Ben Safdie. The movie is about Mark's career, who got his start in the late 90s and early 2000s, back when UFC isn't what it is today. It was more violent, it was more brutal. People wanted to see it banned because of that. So part of this movie takes place with his career here in the United States, but also going overseas to Japan to fight over there. Mark is a very complex, gentle giant where there are moments where he is so soft and comforting and will take the time to talk to a kid in the waiting room at his doctor's office, and where he is speaking to a kid and breaking down why he fights, what goes through his mind when he's trying to beat his opponent, how the two people don't hate each other, it is just a business. But in Mark's head, he only knows one thing, and that one thing is to win. But you see him throughout the movie just be this really soft-spoken, normal guy that is so lovable. And then he has these moments of rage because of all the things he is battling with addiction, with pain, where he turns into this completely different person that goes on to be dubbed as the Smashing Machine. And not only do you see him flip that switch in the ring, but you also see him flip that switch in his personal life with his girlfriend, Emily Blunt, where he does things to show her how much he loves her, but he's also dealing with all these feelings that he doesn't know where to put his emotions. He doesn't know how to express it. He is literally in pain every single day. So that frustration comes out with him kind of lashing out towards her. So in this story, you see Mark fight a lot of people. He fights other people in the ring in the most literal sense. He fights himself because a lot of his issues have to do with his own personal struggles. He fights with his girlfriend and him taking his career and his fighting more seriously than he does their relationship. And with all these struggles that Mark had going on in his life, I found the movie jumped around a lot. And I think where the movie struggled was to really paint you a picture of who Mark Kerr is. Before The Smashing Machine, I had no idea who Mark Kerr is. I wasn't going into this because I'm a huge fan of him and wanted to see a biopic about him. But if you're going to make a movie about somebody that most people don't know who they are, you have to make their story so compelling that that doesn't matter. And I don't think The Smashing Machine succeeded in that. The movie was a slow burn, and it didn't really feel like it reached its climax at any point in the film. While there was some moments where the cast shined, particularly Emily Blunt, I think had probably the most powerful scene out of the entire movie from any character. And there were moments that you felt for Mark Kerr, and The Rock really tried to squeeze out that Oscar-worthy performance. But those moments were few and far between, that the movie felt a little bit too cozy for comfort for a character that really needed to be developed and a story that really needed to hit a home run. I never really felt that moment where I was fully right there with Mark Kerr, because even when Mark reached his lowest of lows in the film, I didn't really feel it wholeheartedly. And I don't know if that was Ben Safdie's direction and vision or The Rock's performance, but I had a really hard time developing an emotional attachment to Mark, who I think is a really unique and interesting person, and this is the most three-dimensional character that The Rock has played in years. And I find myself in a weird position now that I feel the need to defend The Rock. If you told me last year, after I went on a huge rant about how Red One, his Christmas action movie, was the downfall of Hollywood, if you told me back when I was on that rant in 2024 that I would be here now defending The Rock because of how much this movie has tanked, and his Instagram post saying you can't predict the box office and you can't control that, I feel the need to come to his rescue because The Smashing Machine opened to $6 million. It came in third overall opening weekend, behind Taylor Swift, behind a second week of one battle after another. The movie cost $50 million to make. And as soon as that happens, people start to jump ship on the movie a little bit, where a big driving force going into that opening weekend was all of that Oscar buzz. And maybe that was just something that we all built up inside our heads because of the trailer, because of when this movie was coming out, because of the director attached to it. And maybe we unfairly put those standards on it. I'm also a huge fan of Texas football. maybe it has the Arch Manning effect where we all thought he was going to be amazing and it was all just media hype. And then you go watch the actual thing and you're like, well, that's not really what I was expecting. And I'm not saying this is a bad movie. I enjoyed The Smashing Machine from beginning to end, even though it wasn't exactly what I was expecting, even though it didn't really drive home that emotional moment. But I was expecting it to be Best Picture worthy. I was not only expecting The Rock to have an easy nomination for Best Actor, but be in contention to actually win his first trophy. After watching this, I think even a nomination would be a stretch because I didn't really feel his performance was at that level. It's also just wild to me, and I can't get over that 6 million number. The Rock has almost 400 million followers on Instagram alone. The movie only made $6 million. How small of a fraction of his followers actually went to see this movie? And I think after last year, I unfollowed The Rock just because his promotion was a little bit too much. But this almost feels like the most popular kid in school has a birthday party and nobody shows up. And the reason I feel I need to defend him is because I commend The Rock for taking this role, for wanting to show people a different side of him because he sees the criticism and you know it. I think this movie is a direct response to people saying he plays the same character over and over, that you could take one still from any Rock movie and you couldn't really tell the difference between. I think even somebody in an interview for The Smashing Machine called him out on that, and he was actually able to do it. But he sees all that noise, and you think celebrities aren't reading all the DMs, aren't seeing all the reviews. I feel like The Rock, maybe to his own detriment, is too consumed with that. And much like Mark Kerr, The Rock is somebody who does not like losing. And those were the parallels I saw between these two characters. Mark Kerr only knows one thing. He only knows to win. If you even put the idea of losing in his head, he can't comprehend that. That word does not enter his mind. I think that is exactly how The Rock is, where any movie that comes out, if it is not number one at the box office, he sees it as a failure. He will immediately go to X or go to Twitter and try to find the win in that. He did it with Black Adam. He did it with Red One. He'll do it with every single movie. And this was the first time I really saw him come across as defeated in his Instagram post, saying that he believes in this film, even though the box office numbers don't represent that. He didn't try to say, well, the audience score is so good, because it does have a good audience and a good Rotten Tomatoes score, even though I don't mention that site on this podcast for different reasons. But the reason I am defending him is that I hope that this doesn't stop him from being more adventurous in the roles that he chooses. He talked about it even before the movie came out, saying he has people in his life that he listens to, that he respects their opinion. He needs them in his life in order to tell him when he is doing something that maybe isn't the best. But ultimately, it is going to be his decision because the people around him don't like change. They want him to still make the movies that are making him and in turn making them money. And the minute you start to shake that up a little bit and certain people aren't getting the percentages that they want, they're suddenly bringing you all these other scripts for like Jumanji 6, 7, and 8. Here's another Kevin Hart project. Here you go. Make us some money. Because The Rock is now a brand. He is a corporation. He is an entity. He is more than just an actor on his journey trying to find the best role. He is a brand. And that is why historically he has a no lose clause in some of his contracts, which all originated from the Fast and the Furious movies. That no lose clause says that he can't lose a fight in a movie. And that is what I struggled with the most, because if you can't lose a fight in a movie, that really limits your character. Because if you can't see a character at their worst, you're not going to enjoy them at their best. If you don't see them beat down and bloody and where it looks like they're never going to win another fight in their life, that they're done, if you can't see them come back from that, you're never really going to root for that character. And in the Fast franchise, him and Vin Diesel both had that in their contracts, down to the amount of punches and damage that each of their characters could take on. It really hasn't been proven that he has that clause in all of his movies, but if you watch Black Adam, it kind of feels like he has that. And I think it probably comes from his background in wrestling, where you can control the narrative. You know who is going to win, who is going to lose. You know the arc of your character, and it all comes down to him protecting that brand because there is so much money attached to it, of him being a tough guy, of him being a hero. And this was the first time where I feel like that wasn't a part of his contract. Aside from the performances in this movie, I really enjoyed the way this movie looked. I believe they shot a majority of this film on a really small 16 millimeter film camera. I think it was called like a Auraflex, where it was handheld, which to me helped capture that raw, authentic feel. There were moments of the Smashing Machine that almost felt like home video style footage. They had this grainy and blown out look that I really enjoyed. And then they also filmed some other scenes with some really big IMAX cameras, but still at times were hand holding those IMAX cameras. I think it has the only ever handheld zoom shot where they actually held this big camera and walked with it in their hands. So the way this movie was filmed really gave it that sense of urgency, that shakiness, that rawness that you feel from the world of fighting, which the fight scenes were probably the best part out of this entire movie, again, because of The Rock's background in wrestling. Those all felt really authentic, but I only wish that there was more of that because, like I was mentioning earlier, the entire story was just scattered around. Here's some fighting scenes. Here's just him and his girlfriend. Here's just him with his struggles and addiction and his pain. And then here's him in Japan. It's a little bit all over the place for the 2-hour runtime that by the end of it in that third act, I was just left feeling a little bit unsatisfied. It goes out on kind of a whimper and really erases the impact of the story by the end of it. Still found the movie enjoyable. I still think it is one of the more noteworthy movies of the year and can't wait to see where it shakes out in the Oscar race. For The Smashing Machine, I give it 4 out of 5 blows to the head.